During the warmer months, pellet waggler fishing accounts for some massive weights on commercials in England, and it's one of my favourite ways of fishing and accumulating those big weights of big fish. The new Daiwa CARPA Pellet Wagglers are available in 7, 9 and 11 grams, and they really are the ultimate float to be using when you're pellet waggler fishing. They're a float that have been fine-tuned from a sort of float that I used to make years ago, and I've made them right up until basically a year or two ago, until I received the original prototypes of these floats. I first saw the importance of having the correct waggler when I used to fish abroad. Fishing sliders and big floats, you need the correct float. The correct float, if it casts right, it fishes right. If it casts and fishes right, there's only one thing going to happen, and that is you're going to catch a lot more fish. Not just yourself, but more fish than your competitors and people around you. I took it on board myself to really make my own floats when I started to use a pellet waggler a lot. And I found that the shop bought ones and the ones that you could get just weren't up to it. They didn't cast straight, they didn't cast right, they didn't fly right. You know, the strength, durability, just everything about them wasn't right. And I took it upon myself, like I say, to build what I think is the ultimate pellet waggler. Obviously, a lot of people just think a Balsa Waggler is a Balsa Waggler. You can't make it any better, you can't make it any worse. How wrong you can actually be. There's some vitally important components in making the correct Balsa pellet waggler. And the 7 gram, 9 and 11 are not only the weights of the floats that I've used over the years and made myself, but it's the length of the float. The Balsa's pretty much the same. You can cut them to length and obviously make them in those 3 weights. It's vitally important because over the years I've experimented, so the 7 gram will reach basically as far as I can fire 8mm pellets and slightly past. The 9 will reach it and just past, and obviously the 11, any adverse weather conditions, strong side winds, I'm going to hit the mark quite easily. All the floats come with a fully adjustable weight system on the bottom that can be adapted, and 2 anti-diving discs. Do it up nice and tight. All the floats will come dotted right down, and this is again a very, very important feature of this float. The more weight the float can carry, the straighter and truer it's going to fly. And this is of utmost importance. When you're loose feeding a little area, even if you want to cast a fish, your float needs to go where you want it to go. There's nothing worse going and getting a nice pellet waggler from the shop, clipping it on, thinking it's brilliant. You cast there and it goes over there. You won't get that with these. Like I say, they've been fine-tuned over the years, and this, in my mind, is the ultimate pellet waggler. Obviously, if it's dotted right down, they need to be highly, highly visible for you to be able to keep an eye on them. That's why in the floats we've gone for those 2 finishes of almost a fluorescent orange and a fluorescent yellow. I've used the yellow today in dark water, and it really does stand out unbelievably. And although it's dotted down, you can see it really, really well. Even when you're just looking down, you can still see it out the corner of your eye. So you've got the anti-diving discs, you've got the fully adjustable weights on the top. You'll notice that it is Balsa colour. It's got a unique, very, very fine, but very, very strong lacquer stroke varnish on it, which keeps the float very, very strong. But the most important part about this is it keeps the weight of the float down. One thing I realised very early on when I was making my own pellet wagglers, the weight in this part of the float needs to be kept to a minimum, so you're casting just the weight. If you can achieve that, it's going to be casting just like a lead weight when you're fishing the ledger. It really does cast well, even with heavy mainline. As I've always stressed, with my commercial carp fishing, always fish as heavy, strong and as durable as I can. I don't want to be on fish, I don't want to have that window of opportunity and my gear starts letting me down. For me, my go-to line when I'm pellet waggler fishing is 8 pound, which is 023 Daiwa Hyper Sensor. It's a very, very smooth, polished line. It really does lend itself to casting these floats, but it's ultra strong and it's unbelievably durable and reliable. It's not for getting 1 or 2 big fish in. A lot of people mistake, you know, the use of heavy mainline for landing big fish. What it's about for me is I can make the most of that window of opportunity in a match. If I've sat there for 4 hours feeding, it's not really happened, I've had an odd fish, and then the last hour, bang, they're there. I want to be able to catch 10, 12, 14 fish in that hour without my gear letting me down. Obviously, when I'm using strong and durable and thicker line, I need the right float, and that's exactly what we've achieved with the Daiwa CARPA range of pellet wagglers. One little tip that I can give you, when I talk a lot about when you're putting your rod down and you're loose feeding, keep that line tight, keep your tip level with the surface of the water, that way there's no slack, and if you do get a bite, by creating that slight angle, the fish is just going to pull, hook itself, and the rod's going to absorb the bite, and you've got that little bit of security just to pop your catapult down and pick the rod up and you're in. Like I say, they used to be handmade, they used to be for the very select few, and they used to be a massive, massive advantage. But now they're available for you to buy over the counter.